you could be oblivious to what's right in front of you, but when you get focused on, okay, this is what I really want to do, that's where the luck and the opportunity kind of come together. Right place, right time.
Yeah, I love that. Welcome to Above the Legal Limit. I'm your host, Justin Chopin, business owner, lawyer, dad, world's best husband, traveler, and adventure seeker. On this podcast, we mix business with pleasure. We'll dive into growth strategies, entrepreneurial adventures, the business of law, and prove that business isn't boring. So let's get ready because we are going above the legal limit. Welcome to Above the Legal Limit. I have a guest here today I'm super excited about, Wayne Marcel, who is, I want to make sure I get it right, you're the head of growth for the Foundation for Inter-Wallet Operability, or FIO.
Yeah.
And also known as, AKA Blockchain Wayne.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for having me. Yeah. I've podcasted for years under that name and it's really stuck. So that's how a lot of people know me in the industry. But yeah. And really the name of our company is way too long, which we shorten it as FIO.
FIO. Okay.
So that's the simple and easy way.
I like Blockchain Wayne. But
Nice.
I'm a personal injury lawyer. And so, everyone's always coming to me with ideas. They're like, Justin, you should be like, chopping the red tape. I was like, no, I'm not doing that. And also, it's Chopin. My niece is really into it. So my niece Edie is always like coming up with ideas, and she's like, you got to be like Justin's bussin', because the alpha zennials, whatever they are,
Oh, yeah.
their bussin' is like slang for like good or tasty. Which I don't. Did you know that? I didn't know that. Well, so I had to Google it.
I've got teenagers.
So
yeah,
all right.
yeah.
My kids are young enough that they're basically like boomers, right? So my kids are like 6 and 8. A 6-year-old and 8-year-old is just essentially a boomer.
It's coming.
With like smaller clothes. So, well, hey, thanks for joining us. So before we got on this show, you were explaining to me the process. So I'm gonna, for all of our viewers, those millions of viewers out there listening to this. Kidding. I'll pretend as though I retained that, but it sounds very interesting. And so, so you're head of growth. So let's talk about that.
Yeah.
That's something that I understand a little bit more about.
Right.
And full disclosure, so I'm not in crypto, but I feel like I should be. For me, crypto is like, the adage of the best day to invest is yesterday.
Yeah.
And then, the second best, I guess, is today. But every time I go to do that, I'm like, well, I don't know. I don't want to buy it today.
It's just like planting a tree, right?
Right. You know. So let's talk about growth. What's your role there?
So as the head of growth, I focus on driving user adoption of our protocol. Our protocol, we can get into the weeds if you want, but at the highest level, our protocol makes using this technology simple and easy. And that's what it takes to do that. So on the growth side, I'm focusing on driving our marketing team to get more awareness of our protocol, what we do. But also, I'm not telling everybody, hey, go to our website, start using our protocol. We do have a tool if you want to start using that, but it's best used. We get integrated into different products, wallets and crypto exchanges and other places. Like there's a lot of platforms that are starting to add wallet connects to where they're integrating Web3 elements, even traditional companies. So is to have them to utilize that. So I drive our business development team to find new partnerships, find new ways, find new avenues to use our protocol. And then also on the support side in terms of a small team of integration support that actually supports those that integrate our protocol with any questions or concerns and account management type stuff. So that's on the head of growth side.
And where are you located? You're located in Southeast Louisiana?
Yeah, so I live in Houma, Louisiana.
Okay.
In New Orleans quite a bit, but based out of Houma. And our whole team is actually remote all over the world. We have a handful in the U.S., but I've got team members in Armenia, Brazil, India, China, pretty much all over the world. Yeah.
See, I love that. And because... look, I'm from New Orleans. I'm born and raised here. The only people, well, let me say it another way. I don't think anyone's more down on New Orleans than like the people who live here. So I always get really excited when like I have a guest on the show who's like, oh, I run this really successful business. I'm like, oh, where's the logo? Are you in Silicon Valley? And they're like, well, no, I'm just here. I was like, oh, I just thought in New Orleans, the only thing you could do is be like a lawyer or a doctor. Right. I didn't, or like wait tables. I didn't know that you could have like a real job. So that's it's fascinating.
I think we need to drive more innovation in the South Louisiana. I mean, this is my home. I was born in Houma, grew up. I moved around a lot, quite a bit in my early 20s, out of the state, and eventually ended up back here, and just really passionate that the way technology is today, we can have that same thriving innovation in New Orleans, just like you would hear like back in the day in Silicon Valley and other places.
Right. And why not? Come on down here. The weather's great.
The weather's great. Food's great.
Great. Weather's great. It's never cold. I'll give you that. There's no crime. But there's great food. Look, you'll get drunk and fat. Okay. What else could you possibly want? I can't offer you a lot more. No, we can't. Let's not kid. Southeast Louisiana, we've got real estate that you don't have to compete with Silicon Valley and places like that.
Yeah.
For the same reason that the Midwest blew up, we have those same resources here. And now, as you pointed out, with, COVID gave us such and I don't mean, if you've lost a loved one to COVID, I don't mean to be crass, but COVID gave us a gift in that it pushed us through the door. We were there, like kind of standing at it, looking at it, and like, I wonder what's on the other side of that door. I remember my first remote deposition was in 2000. I wasn't even married. It was like 2011, and we were pretty cutting edge. I mean, that's a long time ago. People think of like, well, Zoom did this. That technology's been around forever. It's just that, lawyers are like dinosaurs and they're like, they won't do it until everyone else does. They're like, I guess I'll go extinct. Everyone else has. So, it gave us that gift in that, look, hey guys, this is like really not new or fancy technology, but we made it more accessible to you. And when we did that, it opened up a new world for us to be able to attract quality hires.
Yeah.
So we have VAs helping us out in the Philippines. I've met a lot of business owners that say, well, we've got people in Colombia. We have people in Argentina. We've got people in Ireland. And so, you're not dependent on putting out an ad on Craigslist and seeing what kind of resumes you get. Right.
Yeah. Not limited to one region. It could be, you can find the best person in the world.
Yeah, so I think that's the next stage for business growth for certainly where we are, but also, for all of America and worldwide is, you no longer are dependent on your neighbor. You can hire the very best.
Yeah.
And if you have a business line, it sounds like FIO. Did I say it right? Is it FIO? Did you say FIO or FIO?
I said FIO. Some people say FIO. It's because it's an acronym, man. It's however you want to say it.
Well, look, and you're from Cajun country. Maybe you just missed,
Yeah.
I'm French, but I'm not Cajun French, so we say FIO. No, I'm kidding. So so it sounds like you've got really great employees and team members throughout the world.
Yeah, we're able to find the best team, not limited to any region, and really. So our foundation operates where there is no bank account. Our whole treasury is in a mix of different cryptocurrencies. There's some stable coins, which are cryptocurrencies that are pegged to, in this case, the dollar. So there's no giant fluctuation day to day in value as the market, because there's still a lot of speculation in the market. But I think when you think about cryptocurrency in day-to-day use case in the future, which you mentioned, remote staffs, imagine those people in those other countries you mentioned and I mentioned that don't have to worry about vast currency exchange rates where you have it either on the business side or the individual side, they're having to convert dollars to pesos or dollars to whatever their currency is, and being able to just receive a payment instantly in their wallet. And in many cases, you think about even payroll itself, where payroll, it's really processed once a week, once a month, or every 2 weeks, depending on the place. But if there was a way to automate that to where it could be more frequently, and that may help, especially people in other areas of the world that that the income, what may be not much for you and I, could be substantial to them.
Right.
And you can easily have that to where funds are sent directly to them without involving any currency exchanges, any changes from your bank to their bank, because the banking system itself is slow. I mean, we think we think it can be fast, but really there's only certain aspects that are fast, but the actual transfers really take days and weeks, and in some cases months if there's issues.
That is something that I live in. That is a world I live in, right? Because my job is to give people money, right? So I take injured people, I represent them to get money. Right, there is no other remedy under the law, right? So I can't I can't kill the guy. It was just a car accident. So the only thing I can do is compensate you. So we're talking money, right? So we're talking money. And it's a recurring issue where we are used to, I think, Americans especially, we're on the cusp here of currency. It's like we still have paper money, right? Like my 6-year-old, I don't know where he gets it from, but he's got it. I think he either was like robbing banks or his grandmother. And so he's always, so I get him, I convince him, because I don't love the idea of like a 6-year-old having all this cash laying around the house. And again, like he'll be like, well, I've got $55. I'm like, well, I've got like 24. So hold on a second. Where the hell did you get that?
I think my kids have more cash than me.
Right?
Yeah.
So I don't love the idea. So I try to show him, I was like, look, you're going to give that money to daddy. But I will show him. I say, sit on my lap. I'll pull up my phone. I'll pull up the bank account. And I'll drag the money over into his little savings account so that he can collect no interest on it, and it'll be worth nothing when he's older, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what we do, because we're like we're Gen Xers, and that's how we raise our kids. But we are on this cusp of viewing currency in a different way. I mean, I bet I've got like $4 in my pocket, right? Mm-hmm. If I were to, I have a $5 bill. That's the most money I've had in my wallet probably for like 2 months. If anyone were to rob me, they would be so disappointed. I was like, I'm sorry, I have nothing. No one ever believes me, like the guy begging on the street, like, do you have any change? I'm like, oof, well, I don't have anything.
Who carries cash?
I have an Amex, I have Apple Pay. And I don't mean to make light of the homeless, but the fact is, we are moving away from paper currency. I was at the airport, and I can't recall exactly what it was, but the airport was like, don't give us your money.
No.
Right? Like there was like an upcharge for money. So we're there. Like we're really there. We all view currency as becoming more and more digital. And so that's an interesting, concept. So we have helpers in the Philippines. The first hurdle was, how do we get them paid? Mm-hmm. So like we can go, like we can vet, and we can hire, and they're just amazing. They're so helpful. But ultimately, nuts and bolts was, we got to pay these people. So I was like, well, just call the payroll company and just say, we need to pay these people in the Philippines. So my director of operations calls them up, and they're like, oh, we don't know how to do that. So like the first hurdle was like, how do we even pay these people? So we had to change our processes and systems to be able to do that. So my question is that how you pay your remote employees? Do y'all use your own system for payroll?
Yeah, so we have our own system built that allows us to pay, but in essence, they're receiving cryptocurrency, mainly USDC, which is a stable coin pegged to the dollar. It's easily convertible worldwide to $2 if they need to get in at the dollars to pay. But in some countries, believe it or not, I mean, the U.S. This is where the U.S. has actually fallen behind. There's some countries where they can just go and start spending that USDC, that digital currency, just like it was dollars. And money has always been moving from harder ways to transport it to easier ways, right? I mean, obviously you can't travel with gold bars. That's how eventually paper currency came about that represented those gold bars, and eventually they did away with it's not tied to those gold bars anymore. Now it's just a currency that you got to basically the full faith of the government that it's going to be worth something. And we've seen inflation happen over time. But then we moved to credit cards and now phone, digital payments, to where it's easier. You don't have to have those dollar bills or coins in your pocket. You can easily pay digitally, and
they're expensive, right? We got to print this stuff. It's dirty, right? But the fentanyl, I don't know if that's real, but like, I don't know. The news says it is. Like you get fentanyl from touching the $100 bill. I don't know. There's a liability there, right? So it's bearer paper, so it's not secure, right? You could take my $5, I guess, if you wanted to. In checks, in the law, we talk about, bearer paper. It means like you've endorsed the back of a check. Well, anybody can take that, and then they can do whatever they want with it. So there is security in the digital currency. I agree with that, and it makes sense. I don't want cash anymore. I was settling a case once, this is years ago, and we were slowly and surely like bankrupting this business in town who's doing bad business, not paying his employees, repeatedly not paying their employees, would fire anyone who ever said anything, would go into the system and like change their time, was spending all the money on dope, was all sorts of discrimination issues. So I'm very proud. I'm like, I'm proud that we bankrupted this business. We don't need that. But his lawyer calls me up. He says, all right, Justin, I got the money. I said, okay, great. He goes, it's in cash. I said, what? Like, do not come up here with that kind of cash. He can go to the bank and get a certified check like everybody else. I was like, they'll kill me. You know, I'm not walking down the street in New Orleans with, I can't remember what it was, but like tens of thousands of dollars in actual cash. I was like, no. A lot of people would want that because then they could take it off the books. I would much rather just pay taxes on it and not have it be my problem or be held up at gunpoint, right? So, so let me ask you this, because this is what's on my mind, right? Because when people say crypto, what they're really talking about is Bitcoin. Obviously, that's not the case. But the stable coin that you're talking about being tied into the dollar would be like just another way to pay somebody without barriers and time delays. But the news, they want to talk about Bitcoin because it's sexy, right? Because you have these wild fluctuations. And the last time I was keeping up with it, you know, the prediction was Bitcoin's going to be worth, you know, like $1 trillion. It's going to be $1 trillion asset. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, the reason I definitely think so. Bitcoin right now is fluctuating between $65,000 to $70,000 per Bitcoin, and it's because there's a fixed supply. The reason these predictions come out that it's going to be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, it's going to be worth millions. I mean, it all sounded crazy to me when I first got in. I bought my first 3 Bitcoin for under $1,000 a piece. And even then, thinking, okay, 10x from here would be great.
Sure.
But I started studying our financial systems and how money works, in essence, fiat currency, which is what the U.S. dollar is, and really any other government in the world that has their own issued currency. There's no backing to it. Whenever there's problems, friction, we saw it during COVID. What happens? We just print more. Right. And we think, oh, that's the solve for everything. And then you even have, you know, the Fed saying, oh, that's not going to impact inflation. Well, 4 years later, what happened, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And so that's the reason is you get these wild predictions is because the more adoption happens with Bitcoin, there's a fixed supply. There's only so many. And every time you turn around, it's getting more and more use case and adoption. Countries adopting it, companies using it, ETFs are happening, which means more companies that wanted to hold some as kind of like a hedge against inflation in the dollar, they now have a legal avenue to do that, whereas before they were like, oh, we really want to, but we can't touch it because we don't have regulatory clarity. So more and more demand is happening for that, and there's a fixed supply. So even if one Bitcoin, it goes to $1 million per Bitcoin, you and I can still transact. I can still send you a few dollars worth of Bitcoin.
Right, you could send
because of the way it's divisible.
Of a share.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so it's not like we think of dollars and cents where there's only 100 pennies in a dollar. There's it's basically like 8 places behind a decimal point. So it allows you to have that hard money that's fixed, that no arbitrary person can go in and say, hey, let me go in and change this, because now you have networks, you have computers all over the world that are quote unquote mining Bitcoin, and what they're doing is they're securing the network, processing transactions, and they're earning a reward for doing that. There's a newly created Bitcoin that's coming out every 10 minutes, but that is baked into, that's that total supply of 21 million. We're not there yet. Like it's at like 19 million, but every 4 years it slows down. So now every time you turn around, there's less and less being put out in the market. So demand's going up, available supply is going down. That's why you have those predictions about why it's going to be worth so much. And I didn't really understand that until I looked at that. So for me, Bitcoin is a long game, because I see Bitcoin as a reserve asset that's going to back a lot of things. And we're going to start to see that used as more of like a standard of reserve than what we used to, where everything is, everything across the world is basically linked to what's its value in dollars, U.S. dollars. And we're seeing that shift was already happening, and Bitcoin solves that problem. Now, there's thousands of other cryptocurrencies out there. You and I, you can create a Chopin coin tomorrow if you wanted to. That doesn't mean it's going to have any value. And we think about, governments have to issue currency, but really not. Even if it's a small subset that is only used within, attorneys and settlements, right? Then it has a use case, has a value, and you have the right supply and demand that gives it that use case. Then it'll have value. And that's what we're seeing. I mean, out of the thousands of cryptocurrencies out there, 99% of them are garbage, right? Bitcoin is a core standard. Bitcoin can't do everything. Ethereum, which is like the number 2 cryptocurrency, it's not competing against Bitcoin. It does something completely different, where they implemented what's called smart contracts. So imagine being able to, say you have a client that has like a structured settlement. They're only supposed to receive so much every month or every year. You can program all that into the code to where that's automatically released on a time lock. When you're going to when you're going to sell property one day, you're going to see the title to that property is going to be a digital asset on chain, a digital token. And so the title is a digital token, and they're being paid with currency to where there's a smart contract where, say, when one person enters the title into that contract, the other person enters the money into that contract, both conditions are met, and then the contract releases to each other. So there's a lot less need for basically you're creating trust in a trustless environment to where you don't have to say, okay, I've got to go to make sure that this person's not going to screw me over when I buy this property.
Right.
You can get that. So there's a lot of use cases that are going to be coming from these currencies. And I think that's what most people have trouble grasping, because all they hear about is either Bitcoin and Bitcoin price or anything else. It's always about the volatility. And when you're early in a technology, it's always volatile. I mean, we're only 15 years into Bitcoin. You think about how long how long it takes for money to evolve over time.
Right.
It's really still early. You think back to past technology, like think about the internet, and I mean Amazon at one point in the early 2000s dropped from $100 a share to $10 a share, 90%. You had those wild fluctuations, and the people that believed in it long term, they look like heroes now.
Exactly.
And I think that's really how it is. We've already seen with Bitcoin. Bitcoin's come from fractions of pennies to where it is now, but the reason there's still infinite upside is because people are comparing it to a dollar, which is we're seeing inflation every year.
Well, and it's a mind shift, right? You have to be able to get your head out of dollars and cents. I mean, we're essentially there. I mean, right? As you buy a house, I can go to the bank and get a certified check. Yes. Mm-hmm. But really, a lot of times, the money is being transferred digitally, right? And so you're really removing the physicality, from the dollar as it is, right? So the last house, I don't know, I didn't write anyone a check. I mean, the money was in the bank, and then the bank just moved it from one bank to another. You don't know what they're doing in the back of the house, right?
Right.
Right. So when we talk about this, the way we started this conversation was, the delays and the problems with money. So one of the big problems we have are the delays in money, because we're used to instantaneous. Like, we are an instantaneous society, and we're becoming more and more so. That like everything has to be instantaneous. So clients will say like, "Hey, well, I understand you got that check today. I'll be coming by to pick up the funds," and I will say, "Well, we got hold on.
It takes a while.
You're gonna have to let it clear the bank." And people don't realize, but that can take a really long time. And then every now and then there's like a mistake, right? So I just got an email a few moments ago from a lawyer that's like, our client actually sent the check wrong. It was an e-check. We're going to avoid that. We're going to reissue it. So a lot of times when we get to the end of the whole process, we have to let the banking system really play out, which is about 5 days. Not to say that every client has to wait 5 days. The bank doesn't, like, the bank will say, "Oh, well, Justin, you're good for it," and they'll just that's not healthy either. I'm like, well, no, that's not my money. I can't be that's not how this works. But banks sometimes don't understand their own regulations. So it's fascinating. So then FIO is the avenue by which you allow clients for ease of use of digital currency.
Yeah, it's hiding those complexities and making it easy to use currencies digital currencies, as we see more and more prevalence of it. Current state, like I said, when I first got into this space and went to send my first transaction, I saw this long string of letters and numbers that was a public wallet address that I had to send to. I was like, "What is this?" Called a friend of mine, and he was like, "Yeah, make sure you don't mess up. Make sure every copy and paste it. Make sure every letter and number matches. And if you mess up, you could lose your funds."
You're just sending it to a different person.
Wherever.
You're sending it to the wrong address. I assume if you send it to the wrong address, you can't just call them up and be like, "I'm going to need you to void that check and send it back."
Well, that's if it's a valid address. If it's not a valid address, there's not safeguards in place to stop you. And that's really what was needed, to where now, like with anytime someone's interacting and they're using our protocol, they would use a handle, which is similar to an email, user at domain. So it could be Justin at Chopin, right? So that could be your handle. And if I type it wrong, it won't let me send it. If I type it right, but I'm trying to send you Bitcoin and you don't have a Bitcoin address linked to that handle, it stops that user from saying, okay, it won't let them send it. So it's the guardrails you need to make things simple. It's the same concept, like I said, with internet adoption, where we saw internet had been around for a while, and whenever they started making the user interfaces easier and simpler, then we saw like a mass acceleration of adoption.
Right.
Same thing with this technology. It's hard. It's great tech, and there's people building great stuff. But until we make it simple and easy to where people can use it, then we're not going to see an uptick in adoption. And so that was really what we focused on doing. Was like, hey, let's make this easier for people. Let's give them the way to do it, utilizing the technology that was there, and built out something to where you can have 100% control. Because I think we're going to see a day where people don't necessarily need banks are going to still play an important role in people when it comes to like maybe loans and other things. But to hold our money day to day, we're not going to need banks for that, because you can control your own assets. And it's going to see, just like remember when we first started using internet, like AOL dial-up. Remember that screeching sound?
Yeah.
Right. That was because we were trying to do internet over a phone line, phone line that was very basic and not designed for it. And now even landline calls go over the internet, right? So
all of ours,
that infrastructure inverted to where now the telephone lines run on the infrastructure built for the internet. And I think banking is going to be the same way, to where instead of us trying to, right now there's the friction points of, I got to go through my bank to buy crypto, or if I want to sell it, I've got to go back and forth. But there's going to be a point where all that's going to flip, and banking is just going to be one application that's on a blockchain, to where I can use, use this application to be able to do what I need to do to get my money, send my money, pay people, pay bills.
Yeah, I have to pay, I can't remember who it is. Somebody, maybe it's my gardener, right? Takes Zelle, right? So I have to do Zelle. So similar concept, right? I mean, in this case, it's not a cryptocurrency, it's USD, whatever. But the bank is like, whoa, hey, Justin, I mean, you don't even know this guy. Are you sure you want to be sending him this money? And I'm like, I know him, he's fine. And then, the app shuts down and they say, you got to call the bank. I don't believe you. You shouldn't be giving this guy money. I was like, he just cut my grass. No. It's the same thing though, right? Because you're right. I mean, once the money's out, I mean, there's no safeguards. So they said, well, we got to make this safer for the individual consumer. Once it becomes safer for the individual consumer, why wouldn't you use it, right? I mean, I have to send, we have a new payroll company that we simply use to be able to pay our people overseas. It would be a whole lot easier if I didn't have to do that. Well, I think that's awesome. I love this. I love the technology. I don't necessarily understand it, but I like it.
Yeah.
And that's okay, because I think that's the whole point, right? I don't have to understand that. That's just not the world I live in. If you make it simple enough, idiots like me can still use it.
Yeah, you don't have to know how a combustion engine works to be able to drive a car, right?
Exactly.
You just need to know how to operate it. But there is some education that needs to be out there, because when people don't understand something, like even at the basic level, not saying you have to understand complexities of how does cryptography and blockchain technology work. No, just the basics of it. And that was the two things I saw when I looked at this in 2016. I was like, wow, there's two things that need to happen for this to really catch hold like it should. And it's going to be education, and it's going to be simple user interfaces. And so at the time, I was in a different career. I was like, I really I want to learn more about this. And I realized the best way to do that was to share what I learned with others. And so I started podcasting. That's when I started podcasting in 2018, sharing education eventually. And then a few years ago, I was holding some events down in Miami just to teach people about crypto. And that's when I met the FIO team. They had just recently launched the protocol, and I was like, yeah, let me help you guys out because I really like what you guys are doing. And then not too long after that, my wife was telling me I was crazy because I was like, hey, I'm quitting this. I've been in the same career for 24 years, and I'm quitting that to go do this thing she didn't understand either. She still doesn't understand
right.
it. But
it highlights in business what I tell people all the time. They're like, how did you do this? How did you do that? And my answer is usually the same, is you just have to be at the right place at the right time. You can't take too much ownership in the direction of your life. You have to be more humble than that. You just happen to be at the right place at the right time. You knew where you kind of were interested. You knew what you wanted to do, and then you meet these guys, and then it all comes together. Mm-hmm. I still think luck is like the biggest driver of industry. Just some good old-fashioned luck will get you whatever you really need.
Yeah, just having that ability, the clarity to make the decision when it's time, because so many people will stay. I could have easily said, no, I'm stable, I'm secure. Maybe I'm not doing what I really want to do, but we're good.
I was in your shoes, but I was a defense lawyer, right? So I'd been a defense lawyer for over 10 years. It was bored. It's boring. It's like a lot of like punching the clock, essentially. And, you can stay. You'll get a steady paycheck. They'll pay you your benefits. Hey, if you're lucky, they'll pay your parking sometimes. And it's a great career, by the way. But if it's not what you want, being honest with yourself and then allowing yourself to be open and available for opportunity and be vulnerable like that, the upside is huge.
Right. I think that's what most people need to take out of that is just wherever, if you're not happy doing what you're doing, or if there's an opportunity for you to do something an opportunity to feel more fulfilled in what you're doing, then, be looking for those opportunities. You could be oblivious to what's right in front of you, but when you get focused on, okay, this is what I really want to do, that's where the luck and the opportunity kind of come together. Right place, right time.
Yeah, I love that. Well, hey, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot.
It was great to meet you. Let our listeners, let them know where they can find you.
Absolutely. So if you want to learn more about what we do at FIO, it's simple. It's FIO.net, FIO.net. That's our website. You can learn more about it. And then I also podcast from No Crypto to No Crypto, from NO to KNOW, focus on sharing things that new users need to be aware of. And blockchainwayne.com is my personal website, in the process of updating it now. But there's a lot of great information on there. And if you have questions, follow me on socials and reach out.
Awesome. Thanks so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it. And I am going to be checking out No Crypto to No Crypto. I'll be there. I'm going to be there today.
All right.
All right. Thanks a lot. Bye. Thank you for joining me today on Above the Legal Limit. If you enjoyed the show and you want to hear more about business and law, hit that subscribe button. If you didn't like the show, keep it to yourself. Remember, there's no limit to what we can achieve. We will see you next week. Until then, even though we're above the legal limit, let's drive safely. Cheers, everyone.